At an isolated outpost in Mogadishu, government troops occupy a ruined house, but they are under siege. For years, these troops have battled to control just small parts of the city, attempting to hold back Islamist insurgents with the aid of African Union peacekeepers. Soldiers in the transitional federal government's army are outnumbered and outgunned by Al-Shabaab, an Al-Qaeda-linked group that controls much of Somalia and much of Mogadishu. In many ways, these soldiers are on the front line of the war against terror, but they lack just about everything an army needs: ammunition, food, uniforms. In the base, they sleep on the floor with their families, sheltering between vehicles. The commander at this base, known as Colonel Aggie, says he has lost 74 soldiers and had 145 casualties this year. These men have not been paid for 5 months, he says, and there are very few recruits.
So we need to fill the gap of that soldiers open, but we need some recruit to increase us. The problem is that the soldiers have not enough salary, have not enough food, have not enough ammunition. We know that, but we are waiting to solve that problem.
And yet, the US State Department has confirmed spending $12 million on funding these troops from March 2009 to March 2010. International donor countries provided around $185 million over the past 2 years, including EU-funded training for the troops in neighbouring countries. The lack of wages has, however, driven some government soldiers to defect to Al-Shabaab. Others simply sell their guns and run. And even in a failed state with chronic levels of poverty, the prospect of fighting a well-armed insurgency on the front line is not very inviting. So it's up to the African Union peacekeepers from Uganda and Burundi to provide combat assistance. These government troops, TFG, are holding a position here in the outskirts of Mogadishu. They're right beside a number of Al-Shabaab strongholds, and it's unlikely that without the African Union just down the road, they'd be able to hold this position. If Al-Shabaab seize ground, it's often AU troops who step in to reclaim it. But government soldiers bear the brunt of the fighting. At the African Union's hospital, injured soldiers are constantly arriving with horrific injuries. They may be paid little or nothing and endure wretched conditions, but some of these young men are resolute that fighting Al-Shabaab is their duty. I asked government soldier Abdullah what the problem was with Al-Shabaab. When asked why, he said, "We have problems with them. The Al-Shabaab don't want the government. They're here every day," he said. "Tonight there is war, tomorrow there will be war, because they don't want the government to stay." These soldiers survive only because they're alongside a well-armed African force. So long as Somalia's army can't stand on its own, this country will remain ungoverned and at the mercy of Islamist jihadists. Jane Ferguson, 4CNN, Mogadishu, Somalia.